Well, what is up, everybody? Hey, it's hashtag sports on the road. Joe is never in the car,
Right.
but there he is. Hey, Joe. Look,
Hey, how we
see,
doing?
I get banged on this channel all the time for the fact that nobody thinks I'm either tall enough or old enough or responsible enough to drive. You can confirm that you drove today. You do have a driver's license. You're sitting behind the driver's seat of that car, right?
I am not going to show you my wife in the passenger seat. We switched real quick. We'll switch back, but okay, all right.
So big news coming out of One Bills Drive. Obviously, the Bills and Miami Dolphins are scheduled to play this Sunday at 1 o'clock. First off, a little pissed that it's a 1 o'clock game. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope that they would play a different time. I was actually hoping for the Saturday night game, but
yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. I still can't get used to the idea of a Monday night wild card game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of happy it's not Monday since I'll be live streaming it. I'm really happy it's not a Monday night game because I still do work Tuesday. But yeah, I have to use that still. But yeah, Sunday at 1 doesn't seem right, but
I know.
It is what it is.
Well, and unfortunately, for selfish reasons, I didn't want to play on Sunday because I have a show Saturday night in Rochester with my band. So it's like you were battling because if they'd played Monday night, I was like, okay, they're out for Saturday. They won't play Monday and Saturday. But now that that's Sunday, it's like, oh God, here we go.
Right. What's happening next week? Yeah.
Selfish reasons, I know.
Sure.
So let's talk about the news at hand. News out of One Bills Drive. Sean McDermott confirmed Micah Hyde and Jamison Crowder have returned to practice. We talked a little bit about this on the post game that Micah Hyde, his window was going to be open, but both players have already been ruled out for Sunday. Sure. What do you think is actually the deal here?
Well, they have to. We saw when Trey White came back, he was practicing for like 2 months before they finally put him back into game time action. So you're not really surprised to see them come back to practice a few weeks before they're actually ready to play. Even if this is simply for the AFC Championship game and Super Bowl, we're okay with that. Now, yeah, we'd love to have them presumably for Cincinnati the second week of the play. Because let's be honest, if we lose to the Dolphins, who have already ruled out Tua, who look like they're starting, I don't even know his name, Paul, Skylar, right?
Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson.
If we lose that game, and to be honest with you, I think that's why we were scheduled for 1 o'clock. I think that Vegas and the NFL kind of had an idea, this isn't going to be pretty. Because there are still people out there who say the Dolphins outplayed us when we played them in Buffalo. They beat us in Miami, and they say that they outplayed us, which is debatable, but we won, so who cares? Right. But I think this game's going to get ugly, and ugly fast. So that's probably why it's at 1 o'clock. But yeah, I think that this move for Hyde and Crowder to come back, practice, it makes sense. We knew that when they came back, it would be practice first. And then I think, like I said, this is mostly for that AFC Championship game. But even if you think that far ahead and say we get Hyde back against the Chiefs, that's dangerous. That's very dangerous.
Well, it is funny because in the presser, Adam Bonini tried to stiff arm Sean McDermott into he didn't try and stiff arm, but tried to backdoor him on a question. So were you preparing that Tua wasn't going to play? Were you preparing? Did you kind of know? You hinted you knew something. Is this what you knew? He kind of smirked and smiled and said, yeah, I'm not going to get into that.
Sure.
We're just going to prepare for the quarterback that's playing. It's Skylar Thompson. And listen, don't you go dumping on Kansas State University as a college just because you don't know who Skylar Thompson is.
Right. What? Yeah,
just because I know who Skylar Thompson is. It's totally fine. It's their string quarterback. You should know.
I wasn't watching the game last week or Miami ever really. I don't watch many Dolphins game. I watch 2 Dolphins game a year, and that's ours, and that's okay.
Jamil has a great comment. He says Skylar Thompson sounds like a name that was made up on Madden in the draft. It does, with the AI auto-generated face when you're 4 years deep on your franchise.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the way it is. So Tua being out, I think, has a big impact on this game, obviously, because you're going with Skylar Thompson. And again, Tua being out makes me feel more comfortable about the fact that they already declared Hyde out. I'm not going to miss Hyde here at this point, right? D. Marlowe, I thought, played relatively well. Can't really complain. Jordan Poyer not practicing today. Poyer's been banged up. He's playing. He's having to cover a lot of ground. He's had a carousel of safeties next to him this year, right? So getting Hyde back isn't a big rush for me right now. Crowder is a curious one though, because Crowder is coming back from that broken ankle. He's been able to work out, right? Like,
yeah.
They haven't done it. They haven't been able to test him as far as stressing the ankle, right? That's what's really
Right.
So Jamison Crowder, season roster.
That doesn't make sense to me either, only because we've seen the Bills call up Cole Beasley 3 times this season. We've seen the Bills call up John Brown now 3 times this season. So I thought we'd see more of them. Jamison Crowder being called up at this point means to me that they're not seeing what they want to see, or potentially not seeing what they want to see out of Cole Beasley or John Brown at this point. I was pretty confident that John Brown wasn't the guy, and I know everyone's excited. John Brown had 1 catch for 42 yards and a touchdown, woohoo! But John Brown wasn't living up to what they thought he would the first 2 games. This is why they looked at bringing Cole Beasley back, even though there are 2 totally different wide receivers. I understand that.
Yep.
It does make me wonder. We are depleted at wide receiver. Maybe this is just someone we can add to the practice squad, and if something happens to Cole Beasley or if something happens to John Brown where they can't go, Crowder's ready.
And that's interesting that you bring it up, right? Because you get only so many veteran adds to your practice squad.
Right.
And isn't it interesting that of the 4 veteran, I think it's 4 or 6 that you get. Actually, I think they might have increased it to 6.
They did.
Of the veteran adds that you get, if it's 6, half of them are going to be receivers.
Right.
Like that's a very odd thing to me. Now, here's the problem though. In order to get them on your practice squad, at this point in the season, you got to waive them, right?
Right.
And every team's ahead of you. So Jamison Crowder's on the 53-man roster. I think the difference here, though, Joe, is that in the postseason, those practice squad call-ups, normally you only get the opportunity to call up your practice squad guys 3 times without them being subject to waivers. That's how you lost Isaiah Hodges, for Bills fans keeping score at home, right? You lost Isaiah Hodges because of waivers. But with the practice squad, you don't have to waive these guys to get them back down in those first 3 games. In the postseason, those rules are gone. You can call up your practice squad guys an unlimited number of games. So no worries there. Crowder brings an interesting dynamic to me, but it's the chemistry that I think is concerning me most. I don't really know if we're going to see Crowder get on the same page as Allen with that chemistry on field to see him replace somebody like Isaiah McKenzie on a postseason roster.
Well, and let's be honest, before Crowder got hurt, we were having our questions of, are these 2 on the same page? Because, he was not reading the routes correctly, dropping some balls. Like, there was some issues between Crowder and Allen that before the injury, we were all saying, okay, well, they'll work this out. It's fine. No problem. But then the injury happened. It's like, uh-oh, like, what are we going to do? So, that's why I agree with you to an extent of the Crowder's, like, a question, like, why? But at the same time, if you see one of those wide receivers go down, again, most of the season we were carrying 5 wide receivers total, and that's not because we had some left over on practice squad. Like, no, that's all we had. So now we go into the postseason. We have what, 6 or 7 wide receivers who might be available to us at some point. I think that's a much better position to be in. But again, that's half of our veteran call-ups. And you look at our offensive line, how banged up they've been all season, and it makes you worry, like, what are we losing on the back end of gaining 3 hopefully strong wide receivers?
And one thing we've kind of not seen is, you hit that long pass to John Brown. They tried to get Cole Beasley in the end zone the game prior. Like, you see these things, and while Cole Beasley and John Brown have been on the team, there's not a lot of tape on them from 2023. And I don't think you're going to expect to see a lot of them in the Miami game plan either. I think that's something that if you're going to game plan a big role for John Brown or Cole Beasley, you do it, but you don't do it until you see the Bengals. You don't do it until you get past that wild card game. And then the gloves are off at that point, right? And we've seen Gabe Davis. He's been a topic of conversation for a while. Fans are worried about the production of Gabe Davis. He came onto the scene gangbusters, right? But does John Brown and Cole Beasley, having them more involved in the game plan, make Gabe Davis a better receiver, or does it limit the amount of impact he can have on the team?
Well, he's limiting himself most of the season. So, if we limit him, I feel like personally, like last year he came on the scene as a gangbuster in the playoffs. Like this was his time to shine was that Kansas City Chiefs game, right? The Chiefs game, he scores 4 touchdowns. He looks amazing. The Bills don't resign some of their wide receiver talent from last year, and they ask Davis to step up in that role. And he really hasn't. I'm not, I would say he is, the 63rd best wide receiver in the NFL as far as like you could see him as like a low end number 2. I see him more as a high end number 3 type guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need those players. So I would say bringing iron sharpens iron. We say it all the time, right? So Davis knew he was behind Diggs, but then he knew he was the second guy. Well, if we get John Brown involved, if we get Cole Beasley involved, all of a sudden you might not be the second guy anymore. Does that make you step up a little bit? Does that make you say, okay, this is my time to shine? I saw last week people were talking about how he had 10 targets, only 4 catches. Well, look at those targets. Like 3 of them were overthrown or something like that. Yeah. Like they weren't all right there. He has 1 drop, 1 where he can't get his toe in bounds, right? Those 2, I think, should have been catches. But other than those 2, you look at the balls that were thrown his way, and it's like, okay, were they really catchable? And so you do wonder about that if you look back through the season. But it's not just him, though. The Bills are, second in the league in drops this season. So even Diggs has an unbelievable amount of drops for being Stephon Diggs. So it's not just him. You wonder how much of this is mental with the whole Ken Dorsey's new, like how many of these red zone turnovers from Josh Allen can be linked back to Ken Dorsey? How many of these, or not even Ken Dorsey's fault, but just like the mental side of that and these drops? I don't think it's just a coincidence. With that being said, I still think they're a great offensive team, second in league, and I think that they'll be just fine.
One of the things I think kind of gets overshadowed about the drops is the fact that ball's coming in at 68 miles an hour from 7 yards away. I wouldn't catch that thing either.
Right.
Let's be honest, right? Some of those drops, while they are, you could call them focus drops, the fact is that ball is humming. Like there are times where your quarterback, he throws it in tiny windows with in really small windows because that timing's so tight. It's not always the easiest pass in the world to catch. Right. I'm not saying he's not great. I'm just saying he's not always the easiest pass to catch.
Have you ever seen Torrey Holt's fingers? If you haven't, take a look. That's what happened.
Like Booker McFarland's fingers, right?
Hate to make a joke this soon after, but if you ever saw Tua's fingers, that's what Torrey Holt's fingers when he got concussed. That's what Torrey Holt's fingers look like all the time.
Yeah, Torrey Holt's hands are a disaster. Total disaster. Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. Chris Carter's hands, same way. Yeah, Chris Carter's hands look identical. I mean, playing with Warren Moon, that will do it. That'll do it. So going into this game, right, we've got a huge game coming up. So Micah Hyde, Jamison Crowder returning to practice. There's been rumors that Hyde has been practicing with the team in a limited capacity. Hyde has been had a very minimal amount of athletic training is what they're allowed to call it, right? He's a very limited amount, not on the field at all. Right. But Hyde has continued to work out in the weight room and doing the limited cardio that the team doctors have been, that have allowed him to do. But again, just him returning to practice is not a stamp that he's coming back for any game at this point. We're talking about a neck injury here. So the ramp, while the window is open, doesn't necessarily mean he's medically ready. However, it does make teams think about it. Right. And in the playoffs, doesn't that matter? Right. Yeah, doesn't that make a little bit of a difference? Aren't you approaching a game if you're Kansas City a little bit different if it's Micah Hyde versus Dean Marlowe?
Right. And you're practicing that week. You're thinking that even if you only spend half the time practicing for Hyde, that's half the time you're not practicing for Marlowe. Right. Like you put a game plan in. You put a game plan in before the inactives are announced. So it's not like the inactives are announced. It's game plan A this week. Like, no, your game plan's already put in place. We talk all the time about your scripted plays, right? So your first 20 plays are scripted pretty much. So, so it matters. And if someone's out there saying, oh, well, they, let me try to rephrase this. The time you spend practicing for Hyde and he's on the field, that's time away from practicing for Marlowe, and all those practices matter. Every single moment matters. So even just saying, like you said, like just saying it's a possibility makes team. Listen, we're all gonna start. every team other than Kansas City now has to prepare for that play where they run in a circle. They're not going to run that play in the playoffs, but you have to be prepared for it now because they ran it once and you saw it. So they're never going to run that play, but now we have to prepare for it. I mean, so it's time that we have to spend preparing for it. So
right. And not only that, but Buffalo also has two receivers that I think all look forward to them contributing in the postseason, in Cole Beasley and John Brown, who again have done minimal for the team so far this season. And we look at it as saying these guys are going to be big contributors. The fact is there's no film to back that up. So teams have to just kind of guess, right? And whatever they do, it should make Gabe Davis a more dangerous weapon, hopefully less targets. Same thing with Dawson Knox that we saw last year, right? Dawson got less targets, but was ultimately more effective. Got to increase those efficiency numbers. Got to get that confidence up for Gabe Davis. I think less targets is probably a better thing, just as long as they're more efficient targets. I agree with you there, Joe. Hey, man, we are at time. It is, hey, listen, go Bills. Tua is officially out. Looks like Kansas State quarterback Skylar Thompson, who threw for under 150 yards last game, I believe. If memory serves me correct, threw for under 150 yards. Raheem Mostert, broken thumb. He's still a go, though. Listen, the turnover central. Raheem Mostert was a problem last game. He was a problem. Buffalo had trouble with him.
Yeah, he did. Yep.
Hey, I'll take those turnovers. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Give the ball to Bum Thumb. Give it to Bum Thumb. That's fine. Mr. Diggs coming in. Thank you so much, Mr. Diggs. Any super chat goes directly to the Williams Syndrome Foundation #charity. It says all of West New York Bills Mafia in the world is ready for Josh and the Bills. Let the band play. Yeah. Hey, listen, let's get them out there. Let's roll. Let's go. Go Bills. As always, thank you to Sean Rogers, Mr. Rogers Holmes. Go check out his YouTube channel. Of course, the Super Bowl's in Arizona. Hey, I'm not telling you that they're going, but I am telling you that there's somebody you can reach out to if you're looking for plans on what to do when you're in Arizona. Just saying that. I'm not saying that wasn't pre-planned, but I am.
We're not saying, we're just saying.
Yeah. And thank you to Troy for becoming a member of the nation. Thank you so much, Troy. And otherwise, we'll see you guys soon. Joe, you're calling the game, right?
I'll be calling the game. Absolutely. You got it.
All right. We post game afterwards. Right. Go Bills. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Talk soon.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth, and right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions so we can take the next step to your financial freedom here in the Valley of the Sun, utilizing real estate. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!